هزار سال جلوتر بوده. این خارجی که حال حقوق بشر پیدا 60 سال عمر از این دیگه. به اونا از اسلام یاد گرفتن دیگه. با کمال تاسف که حال بی‌حیایی، بی‌عزتی، دزدی اینا حقوق بشر رو پایان. یک نفر میه، یک نفر ناحق میکشه، 4 تا طفل تیم همه یتیم میکنه، مالش میبرن. وقتی که میگیرم که جزا بدن، باز میگم حقوق بشر. آیا همین حقوق بشره؟ همون که کشته شد بشر نیست؟ اینا حقوق بشر نیست.
I know these stories, and you can play them endlessly. Like in Islam, they had democracy, human rights. Christians claim we invented human rights, and so on and so on. But we should be very clear here. I think that all religions, if you look closely at them, are basically opportunistic. In the sense that, you know, God or whoever wrote the text says something, then just to make it sure, he adds the opposite thing. Like, don't kill, but as Jesus said, if you don't have a sword, sell your clothes to buy a sword, and so on. So the problem is not, is today's so-called Islamic fundamentalism, terrorism, grounded in Islam? I mean, it's a contemporary phenomenon. So again, all these stories about big democratic potential in Islam, they are true, but the same goes practically for every religion. If we want to find this democratic potential of Islam, we should look for it elsewhere, I think. For example, in Iran, there was an authentic explosion, part of the Khomeini revolution. It was later, under the clerical regime, oppressed. It is now gradually, through the organization of civil society, re-emerging.
But to put a very simple question, should we stay or should we leave Afghanistan?
Here, it may surprise you what I will say. I mean, it may surprise you insofar as I count myself as a radical leftist communist and so on. I don't think the solution is to simply, quickly leave. Because first you screw up totally the situation, change Afghanistan into a much more fundamentalist country than it ever was, and then you leave. I think, I don't know how to do it, but at least one should have, of course the prospect should be to leave Afghanistan. But again, after, if nothing else, after all that the United States did there, as it was just described, all the catastrophe, ruining the entire country and so on, now to simply leave, it's too easy a way out. This is what I don't like about today's left. Their only message is moralistically, let's leave. Just, oh, then we have clear consciousness, and they don't care what will happen there and so on. I hate this easy moralistic left. They mask their lack of ideas by easy moralism, no? That's catastrophe.
In 1989, liberal democracy went global. As Francis Fukuyama said, the end of history. Speaking of democracy, let's start by looking at history before its end.
I don't know what you want me to say now. Okay, my heart is warm when I see this. But my answer would have been that I'm the first to... I don't see any realistic prospect and so on for this thing to return. The story of 20th century communism is over. If Now, if I am asked how to prevent that this will return, but it is returning in China, it is in power as the more efficient capitalism than Western capitalism itself. That's what we should worry. Not old communists coming back to power, but old communists where they are already in power organizing a more efficient and exploitative capitalism than in the West. How will you beat them? I claim, crazy and paradoxically as it may sound, that only the radical left can even provide a good theory of what went wrong with communism. The left didn't yet fully realize to what extent the 20th century left, in all its versions. State socialism left, social democratic left, and all this self-management, local self-organization, more creative democratic left, it's over. That game is over. The left will have to begin from the beginning again. And that's the problem. We don't yet see the clear contours, although we see a great need for this. This is why I think we live in very difficult times. It may appear that things are going still relatively well, but I see very dark clouds on the horizon.
But how to chase away these dark clouds? Let's listen to American pundit Fareed Zakaria.
And this is the great challenge for Western democracies. Can democracies find a way to tackle the hard issues that need to be tackled for the long-term survival and prosperity of their countries? And if they don't, you will delegitimize democracy, because people will say this is a useless system. And you know, they're already doing it in some places with declining voter rolls and declining public participation and a decline of support for the mainstream political parties. You know, the rise of support for fringe elements.
Yes, I think democracy, the way we know it, liberal democracy as an element of global capitalism, is in crisis and will be more and more in a crisis. What does this mean? The big dilemma that I see can also be put in what I call ironically, Fukuyamaist terms. He wasn't an idiot. He is not an idiot. His point was not, it's over. We reached the end of history. His point is that with the rise of liberal democratic capitalism, a certain social and political forum remained as the only realistic option. Or to put it in ironic terms, when I was young, we were dreaming about socialism with a human face. It is as if even the large majority of today's left is dreaming about global capitalism with a human face. Nobody asks the questions seriously. Can we really step out of capitalism? Or is the state, the way we know it, here to stay? Can we imagine a society whose public life is not organized through state mechanisms? Nobody does this. All we do today is to think how to introduce new laws or whatever to make the state and our societies more tolerant towards sexual, ethnic, and so on minorities, more healthcare, more social justice, and so on, but within the system. So the big problem for me is this enough?
Left-wing intellectuals believed always that they owned the vocabulary of freedom of speech and the vocabulary of freedom and tolerance, and that it was the enemy or the opposite side that could be described as bigoted or narrow-minded or exclusionary. So that when the tables are turned, when the key words in the old Enlightenment liberal lexicon are taken over by, let's say, the right wing and given slightly new definitions, left intellectuals don't know what to do. They're entirely discombobulated. They don't realize that they are no longer the same words, the words that they used to march by. And the right wing seems to be infinitely better at taking over the vocabulary of the opponent and using it against the opponent, in this case using it against the left.
there is a deep moment of truth in it. Namely, the central event for me